My husband's mistress disrespected me at the wedding reception. She raised her hand in front of 200 guests and slapped me across the face, shrieking that I'd ruined her dress and that a useless, pathetic woman like me had no business breathing the same air as her. My name is Naomi Hayes. I'm 44 years old. I spent 20 years building a quiet, honest life, and the woman who just humiliated me at my best friend's wedding reception was my husband's mistress, the woman he'd been secretly sleeping with for the past year. The ballroom went dead silent. Not one guest stepped forward to defend me, not even my own husband, who stood just feet away and watched the woman he betrayed me with strike me in front of everyone we knew. But as I turned to walk out of that reception with the last of my dignity, 3 Rolls-Royces were already pulling up outside the hotel, for the very woman his mistress had just called worthless. I didn't know her name when the night began. I only knew there was a woman across the room who kept looking at my husband a half-second too long, and looking away a half-second too fast. That's how you know. Not the big things. The small ones. The way a man's shoulders tighten when a certain laugh crosses a room. The way his eyes find someone before his mind lets him. Marcus had told me he loved this venue. Said it reminded him of our own wedding 16 years ago, back when his hands used to shake before he kissed me. Tonight his hands were steady. Too steady. A man whose hands don't shake anymore isn't calm. He's practiced. The ballroom smelled like white lilies and candle wax and champagne gone slightly warm in its glasses. String lights hung low across the ceiling like something out of a dream I used to have about my own life. My best friend Renee was radiant in the middle of the dance floor, laughing with her new husband, completely unaware that 20 feet away, her wedding was about to become the night I found out the truth. I saw the woman before I knew what she was to me. Blonde, sharp-eyed, a red dress that fit like it had been poured onto her. She kept drifting toward our table with a wine glass in her hand like it was an anchor. Marcus wouldn't look at her. That was the tell. A man who doesn't know a woman doesn't work that hard to avoid her eyes. I told myself I was imagining it. 20 years of marriage teaches you to talk yourself out of your own instincts, because the alternative is too heavy to carry into a wedding reception. Then it happened. She turned near the bar, wine glass tilted, and it spilled, down the front of her own dress, not mine, but somehow, within seconds, I was the one being blamed for it. She spun toward me with a fury that didn't match a few drops of wine. It matched something older. Something that had been building for a long time in rooms I was never invited into, at moments I was never told about. "You did this?" she said, loud enough for heads to turn. "You clumsy, useless woman." I said I hadn't touched her. I hadn't. Every person standing near that bar knew I hadn't. But something in her wasn't asking to be believed. She wasn't defending a dress. She was performing an ending. The ending of a secret she'd apparently decided she was tired of keeping. "You have no idea who I am to him, do you?" she said, and smiled like the words were a gift she'd been saving. "Ask your husband where he was last Tuesday night. Ask him whose apartment he left at 6 in the morning." The room around us went quiet in that specific way a room goes quiet right before something breaks. I felt my whole life tilt sideways, the way a car does the half-second before it starts to slide on ice. You're not crashing yet, but you already know you are going to. I looked at Marcus. I begged him with my eyes to tell me she was lying, to say one word, any word, in my defense. He looked at the floor. That silence told me everything 20 years of marriage hadn't. It told me the truth before she ever said it out loud. And in the one unguarded second where my face must have shown exactly how much that silence had gutted me, she raised her hand and struck me across the cheek in front of every single person we both knew. "Useless, pathetic woman," she said. "You don't belong anywhere near him." The sting came a half-second after the sound. Somewhere behind me, a glass shattered on the marble floor. Mine, I realized, slipping from my own hand. 200 people watched a woman my husband had chosen over me tell the room I didn't belong in it, and not one of them, not Renee's family, not our closest friends, not my own husband, said a single word to stop her. I picked up the pieces of my composure the way I've picked up every other broken thing in my life. Quietly, without asking anyone for help, I turned. I walked toward the doors of that ballroom with my cheek burning and my heart in fragments. and I did not let a single person in that room see me cry. I had no idea that outside, in the cool night air, 3 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms were already turning into the circular drive. Men in dark suits stepping out with the kind of quiet purpose that changes a person's entire life in under 60 seconds. I had no idea that the woman who had just called me worthless in front of everyone I loved was about to find out exactly who I was. The night air hit my face like something honest. Finally, after a room full of lies, I stood on the curb outside that hotel, one hand pressed to my stinging cheek, watching my own breath fog in front of me, and for one small moment, I let myself feel every bit of what had just happened. Not as Naomi the wife, not as Naomi the woman who never causes a scene, just as a human being who had been struck in front of everyone she loved and left there alone. Before I go on, if this story is gripping you the way I think it is, I need to tell you something real quick, because it matters to me more than you know. My husband once told me in one of our worst arguments that I could never build anything of my own. Not a business, not a following, nothing. That I didn't have what it takes to get this channel to 5,000 subscribers. I've never forgotten that. So if you're watching this and you haven't subscribed yet, I'm asking you, gently but seriously, prove him wrong with me. Hit subscribe, turn on that notification bell, and stay with me for what happens next, because it's about to change everything. Now, back to that curb outside the hotel, back to the coldest, most defining night of my life. I heard the engines before I saw the headlights. A low, expensive hum, the kind that doesn't rush because things that cost that much never have to. 3 sets of headlights turned off the main road and swept slowly across the hotel's stone entrance, one after another, like a procession that had been choreographed long before I ever stepped outside. 3 black Rolls-Royce Phantoms pulled into the circular drive and came to a smooth, silent stop. I remember thinking, in the strange, numb haze of that moment, that maybe they were for a different event. A gala, film premiere, anything other than me, standing there in a torn hem and a stinging cheek, holding the shattered remains of a night I would never get back. Doors opened. 4 men stepped out first, quiet, composed, the kind of stillness that only comes from people trained to protect something valuable. They didn't look at the hotel. They looked at me. Then, from the second car, a man in a charcoal suit stepped out, silver at his temples, moving toward me with a purpose that made my chest tighten. When he reached me, he didn't reach for a handshake. He bowed his head, slightly, respectfully, the kind of gesture you give someone whose name means something. "Mrs. Hayes," he said, "my name is Gerald Whitmore. I'm senior legal counsel for the Ashworth Group. I apologize for the timing, but the board's ratification could not wait any longer. And when we learned you were here tonight and unreachable by phone, we felt this needed to happen in person." I stood there, frozen, my cheeks still burning, trying to understand words that didn't yet make sense to the woman I currently was. Because here is the truth I had never told anyone in that ballroom. Not Marcus, not Renee, not a single guest laughing under those string lights. My mother's maiden name was Ashworth. My grandfather built a hospitality empire from a single boarding house in Charleston into a company that now owned hotels across 4 states, including, though barely anyone alive still remembered it, the very hotel we were standing in front of that night. My mother walked away from that name when she married my father, a man her family considered beneath her, and she raised me to never lean on money I hadn't earned myself. "I want you to know who you are," she used to tell me. "Before you ever know what you have." I had kept that promise for over 20 years. I built my own small design business from nothing. I never once used the name. 6 months earlier, my uncle, the last Ashworth still running the company, had passed away without children of his own. The board's charter required the family line to be located and reinstated. I had taken calls from lawyers quietly, in parking lots, in the 15 minutes between clients, never telling Marcus, never telling anyone, because I hadn't yet decided if I even wanted that world. Tonight, apparently, that world had decided for me. Behind me, the hotel doors opened. I heard Marcus's voice before I saw his face. Panicked, disbelieving, chasing the sound of engines he didn't understand yet. And right behind him, still in that wine-stained red dress, was her. The woman who, 10 minutes earlier, had told 200 people I didn't belong anywhere near her. Her face, when she saw the cars, when she saw Gerald Whitmore bow his head to me, when she heard him say the word bored and the word Ashworth in the same breath. Her face did something I will remember for the rest of my life. Fell apart in real time. Ashworth, Marcus repeated, staring at me like he was seeing a stranger. As in the hotel company. That Ashworth. Yes, I said quietly, and for the first time all night, my voice didn't shake. The woman in the red dress. The one who slapped me, who called me useless, who told a room full of people I didn't deserve to breathe the same air as her. Stood frozen on the hotel steps, still holding a napkin pressed uselessly to a wine stain that, in comparison to what she now understood, suddenly meant nothing at all. She had humiliated a woman she thought had nothing. She had no idea she had just humiliated the only person in that building who could take everything away from her with a single phone call. Gerald Whitmore didn't rush. Men like him never do. He simply stood beside me on that stone driveway, a quiet wall between me and everyone who had just watched me get struck, and waited until I was ready to speak. That waiting, that small, unglamorous patience, was the first time all night someone had made room for me instead of taking something from me. Marcus found his voice before she did. "Naomi," he said, stepping forward. "Why didn't you tell me any of this?" I looked at him for a long moment. 20 years of breakfasts and birthdays and quiet Tuesday nights passed through my mind in that single look, and underneath all of it, one simple, aching question I finally let myself ask out loud. "You want to know why I never told you about a fortune I never asked for?" I said. "But you never once told me about a woman you were seeing for a year. I think we both kept secrets, Marcus. Mine just happened to be worth more than yours." He had nothing to say to that. For the first time since I'd known him, my husband was completely out of words. She spoke next, the woman in the red dress, still gripping that ruined napkin like it could undo the last 5 minutes of her life. Her voice had lost every bit of its earlier fire. "This doesn't change what he did," she said, quieter now, almost pleading. "It doesn't change what's between us." "No," I said, "it doesn't. But it changes what you thought you knew about the woman you decided was worthless enough to hit in front of 200 people. I stepped a little closer, not out of anger, but because some things need to be said face to face or they don't count. "You didn't slap a stranger tonight," I told her. "You slapped a woman who spent 20 years building a life quietly, honestly, without ever once needing anyone's permission to be worth something. The Rolls-Royces didn't make me valuable. I was valuable in that ballroom in my ordinary dress, at that table you thought I didn't belong at. The only thing that changed in the last 10 minutes is that you finally noticed." She didn't answer. She didn't have an answer. Her silence said everything her earlier cruelty had tried to hide. That somewhere inside her, she had always known exactly what she was doing, and had simply never expected to be caught by someone she believed had nothing to fight back with. I turned to Gerald. "I'll come by the office Monday," I said. "Tonight. I just want to go home." "Of course, Mrs. Hayes," he said, and for the first time in 20 years, someone called me by my name like it carried its own weight, not my husband's. I didn't go home to the house Marcus and I shared. I went home to my sister's spare room, with one bag and a torn hem and a cheek that would bruise a soft shade of violet by morning. A bruise I would look at in the mirror for the next 2 weeks and feel, strangely, less like a wound and more like a starting line. The divorce took 4 months. I didn't fight for the house. I didn't fight for the furniture. I only asked for what was mine before I ever met him, and left the rest, because some things aren't worth carrying into the next chapter of your life, no matter how long you spent building them. Renee called me the morning after the wedding, crying, apologizing for a night that was never her fault. I told her the same thing I'm telling you now. You don't have to be loud to be strong. Sometimes the strongest thing a woman can do is turn around, walk out with her head up, and let the truth arrive in its own time, in its own way, without her having to scream a single word to make it happen. I found out, a few weeks later, that the woman in the red dress lost far more than a wedding guest's opinion of her. Word travels fast in small industries, and mine, it turned out, wasn't so small after all. She learned, the hard way, that cruelty has a cost, even when you think no one important is watching. As for me, I sat in my first board meeting 6 weeks later, in a plain navy dress and my grandmother's small gold earrings, and I said very little. I didn't need to prove anything to a room full of strangers. I had already proven the only thing that mattered, months earlier, on a curb outside a hotel, when I chose to walk away with my dignity instead of staying to defend a marriage that had already ended long before that slap ever landed. If you're still here with me, if this story moved something in you tonight, I want you to know something simple and true. You don't need Rolls-Royces to prove your worth. You don't need anyone's permission to belong at your own table. The next time someone tries to make you feel small in a room full of people, remember this: the way they treat you says everything about them and nothing at all about you. And if my husband was wrong about me not being able to build this channel to 5,000 subscribers, then let's prove it together. Subscribe, ring that bell, and I'll see you in the next story.